We navigate our lives convinced that our thoughts, decisions, and biases belong entirely to us. But the things we believe may actually be steered by unseen forces in our environment. Psychology suggests that human behavior is a highly malleable vulnerability, constantly adapting to the rules of the spaces we inhabit. It raises a terrifying question. How quickly can an ordinary, harmonious group be engineered into hostile oppressors, simply by changing the parameters of their reality? This certainty in our own free will is often what leaves us most exposed to manipulation. In April 1968, the United States was fractured. Following the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., racial tension and grief dominated the national consciousness. But the effects of that turmoil felt distant in Riceville, Iowa, a small, geographically isolated farming community with an entirely white population. Here, a third-grade teacher named Jane Elliott was struggling to explain the assassination to her students. She found that lecturing 8-year-olds about the concept of prejudice was failing to get through. To bridge that gap, Elliott abandoned her lesson plan and decided to force an experiential learning process through a closed-environment simulation. To show them the mechanics of discrimination, she realized she had to construct a miniature version of an oppressive society within the 4 walls of her classroom. Before the experiment, Elliott's class was a standard group of cooperative, friendly children who played together without conflict. The trigger for the simulation was the color of their eyes. Elliott arbitrarily divided the students using a single physical trait they could not control. She immediately established institutional favoritism, announcing that the blue-eyed children were superior. They were granted systemic privileges, like access to playground equipment and extra recess time. To cement this hierarchy, the inferior brown-eyed children were forced to wear fabric collars, ensuring their lower status remained a constant visual marker for everyone in the room. By combining an arbitrary physical category with strict institutional rules, an authority figure manufactured a social hierarchy out of thin air. Within 15 minutes, the psychological shift was complete. Lifelong friends began to abandon their loyalties. The elevated blue-eyed students rapidly changed. They adopted bossy, arrogant mannerisms and actively discriminated against their classmates. The academic data reflected this immediately. The blue-eyed group's ability to process tasks and answer questions spiked upward. Simultaneously, the brown-eyed group collapsed. Previously quick children began to hesitate and stumble, suffering a severe drop in their test metrics. The brown-eyed children became physically downcast, exhibiting a sudden and visible loss of self-confidence. By recess time, the classroom had self-segregated. The 2 groups refused to interact, treating the arbitrary line as an absolute barrier. This is the internalization of roles, a phenomenon where individuals subconsciously adjust their own capabilities to match the expectations of their assigned status. Academic performance and self-assurance shifted in real time, responding to the feedback loop of their surroundings. On the second day, Elliott reversed the hierarchy. She declared the brown-eyed children were actually the elite group, stripping the blue-eyed children of their privileges. The newly favored brown-eyed group instantly adopted the same oppressive and cruel behaviors they had suffered from just 24 hours earlier. Empathy vanished. The previous victims did not use their new authority to dismantle the system. They used it to exact retribution on their peers. The students demonstrated how quickly discriminatory patterns can be adopted when an environment permits them. In this classroom, hostility was a byproduct of the structure Elliott built, suggesting that power dynamics can heavily influence individual behavior. When Elliott terminated the experiment, the physical collars were removed. The rules were lifted, and the original equality of the classroom was restored. As the simulation broke, the children snapped out of their roles. They were left to process the deep shame of the pain they had both inflicted and endured. Years later, when these students were united as adults, they recalled the physical collars with lingering shame. This exercise replaced abstract concepts with a lifelong understanding of systemic unfairness. Even when a social hierarchy is exposed as a fabrication, the psychological impact and behavioral changes it leaves behind can remain long-lasting. This study took place decades ago in a 3rd-grade classroom, but the lens it provides scales up to our global society today. If innocent children can be reprogrammed into oppressors in 15 minutes, we must consider how deeply adults are influenced by the media, politics, and authority figures in our daily lives. Our behavior and moral boundaries remain terrifyingly fluid, constantly shaped by the narratives our environment assigns to us. ये प्रयोग केवल एक बात साबित करता है, इंसान का व्यवहार उतना स्थिर नहीं है जितना हम सोचते हैं. If you enjoyed this documentary, let us know your thoughts in the comments. And for more psychological mysteries, scientific experiments, and unsolved stories, subscribe to Documebula USA. The ultimate illusion of control is believing we are the ones holding the strings.